Okay, excellent. It looks like we're live, which is very exciting. Hi, everyone. We are getting, just online a few minutes early before the official start time, but it's so great to see everyone join this live stream. And hello. It's a few minutes before 11 Pacific time, so we're just giving everyone the opportunity to settle in and get really excited for this upcoming Labside Chat. We won't get started yet, but as you're waiting, go ahead and introduce yourself in the live chat or in the live comments. We'd love to see where our viewers are watching from, where they're tuning in from, and maybe we'll even give you a shout out too during our conversation today. Okay, excellent. Hi, everyone. Oh, it's so great. Awesome. So if you're just joining us, it's about a minute before 11, and we're just giving folks the opportunity to settle in. We'll get started pretty soon, but I hope you all are ready for a really fantastic conversation we have all lined up. Excellent. Okay, awesome. And again, if you're joining us, go ahead and say hi in the live chat or in the live comments. We'd love to see the Seymour Center supporters tuning in. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you're watching from. And like I said earlier, we may even give you a shout out too during today's conversation. All right, excellent. So it's just, it's 11 o'clock over here on the West Coast. So let's go ahead and get officially started. I don't want to waste any time because we have a fantastic program lined up today. But hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Labside Chat with the Seymour Marine Discovery Center. If this is the first time you are joining us for this program, my name is Jen Cormier. And today's Labside Chat will give us the opportunity to speak with a scientist from UC Santa Cruz and Long Marine Lab. And hopefully our conversation will show how scientific research plays a role in the understanding and conservation of the world's oceans. Before I introduce today's scientist, which I'm so excited to do, I first want to give a huge shout out to everyone who submitted questions in advance for our scientists today. There were so many wonderful questions, and I hope we have time to go through them all. But if you did not have the opportunity to pre-submit a question, please go ahead and add it into the live chat or in the live comments as well, and we'll be able to answer those too. So, without further ado, I am so thrilled to introduce today's scientist to you all. Dr. Carolyn Casey is here, and she is so incredible because she is a research associate at UC Santa Cruz and also holds some other really impressive titles from other organizations. But we are going to be able to chat about all things elephant seals, animal behavior, vocalizations, and the like. And I'm sure we'll get more in depth into those topics as we go on with the conversation. So Carolyn, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, of course, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited to join you guys and to get to know you and to answer any questions that you have about elephant seals.
That's so exciting. And I know elephant seals are some of the most interesting animals, and I know so many people have questions about them. So again, feel free to add your questions into the live comments or the live chat. But Carolyn, just to get us started and to really set the stage for today's conversation, my first question for you is that I want to ask you about your research in particular. So what type of questions are you really trying to understand or answer with your research?
Yeah, that's a good question. I started my career just being fascinated by watching animals. I was really inspired by Jane Goodall. She's like my scientific hero, and I love the idea of going out into the environment and just kind of laying eyes on animals as they're behaving naturally and figuring out kind of what's going on and beginning to predict what animals are going to do. So from that, I kind of zeroed in on acoustic behavior, because if you have seen an elephant seal colony, you certainly know that it is a very soniferous place. The noises probably reach you before the smell or the vision of an elephant seal does. And so for the past decade, my research has been primarily focused on basically figuring out what elephant seals say to one another, and trying to decode the sounds that they make and what they mean in the reproductive behavior of the species. So that's kind of my general interest. And it kind of expands into areas of male-male competition, mother-pup interactions, and, you know, kind of the developmental process of how elephant seals grow up on the colony. So, but broadly, I'm interested in the communication.
That is amazing. And so before I get into all of the questions that were submitted about elephant seal behavior and communication, I first want to ask you about what an elephant seal actually looks like. Because a lot of people that are probably tuning in today have never seen an elephant seal before. And so how do you know that you are looking at an elephant seal? Like, is there, are you looking for size or color or a feature on their body? Like, what makes an elephant seal an elephant seal?
It's a great question. Elephant seals are some of the largest seal species. The only other larger seal species is the southern elephant seal, which lives down, in the southern region of the hemisphere. But northern elephant seals, which I primarily focus on, are known for their huge size. So males can weigh up to 4,000 pounds, believe it or not, and females are slightly smaller. They're under 1,000 pounds. They're sexually dimorphic, meaning that males look different than females. So females are kind of brown, tan, maybe the size of, I'm trying to think, the size of a motorcycle in terms of total length. The males are going to be much longer, about 4 meters long. So, very big. And the males, of course, are known for their proboscises, or their noses, which is where elephant seals get their names. It looks like an elephant's trunk. And the males also have a very calloused chest shield, which other seals don't have, right? And this is from a lot of the fighting that they do during the breeding season. And so in a big adult male, you can see this scarring and kind of scar tissue going all along the neck. Both males and females are like a light tan brown, and you probably know you'll be looking at an elephant seal based on the fact that they're one of the only seal species that breed on land, primarily in California. And so if you see a big aggregation of seals, then it's probably elephant seals, because most other phocids or true seals breed aquatically.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, great. So we kind of have a picture in our head about what elephant seals look like. And you said a lot of your research is looking at communication or vocalizations. And so I have to ask, and I know this is a very general question, but why vocalizations? Like, why are vocalizations or acoustic communication so incredibly important for elephant seals?
A really good question. It really depends on what we call the Umwelt, or the perceptual world of the animal that you're studying. So for us as humans, we're really dependent on vision in terms of communicating. And so we do a lot of hand gesturing. We can tell a lot about one another based on the facial expressions that we're making. We communicate a lot of information that way, but also through talking to one another. We're also very dependent on hearing. So those are our main ways of interacting with the world around us. But if you take a tick, for example, it doesn't have great vision or great hearing. It senses its environment through heat, right? So it sticks its little legs out and it can pick up the heat signatures of other animals around them. So the way in which an animal perceives their world is very different depending on the species that you're working with. For elephant seal, sound is incredibly important, both in air and underwater. So underwater, sound is used for navigation, predator detection, potentially communicating with other individuals, although we don't really know what's happening with elephant seals while they're at sea. On land, while vision is probably important, you can tell just by going to an elephant seal colony that the acoustic landscape is so rich. You have animals vocalizing all the time. You have the waves kind of crashing on the beach. There's a lot going on. And so we think that that vocalizations in particular probably can convey a lot of information over a pretty large distance. So they can kind of keep, communicate with one another, over a far range using acoustics because they're very loud. But I will say that no component of communication acts independently. It's usually what we call multimodal. So you usually have a visual component and an acoustic component, and it's hard to sort of separate those two. But we do try to do that in an experimental setting sometimes.
Wow. So it sounds like these elephant seal colonies that you described are so incredibly loud and noisy, and there's so many different elements going on. So one part of your research that you look at, right, is the male-to-male interactions. And so because when I look at elephant seals, usually, and I see the males, and I know that it's breeding season and there's a lot of activity going on. So can you talk a little bit more about your research into sound and male-to-male interactions and what you found out?
Sure, yeah. So for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to visit an elephant seal breeding colony, I'll give you the general lay of the land. So they come to the beaches in December and they aggregate in these really big groups. So, you have maybe 100 or, 200 females kind of all hauled out together, and their main job is just to give birth to and rear their pup for a period of about 30 days or so. So that's what they're doing. They all gather together to be safer, right? Because there's safety in numbers. Now, because they aggregate in these tight clusters, it gives the opportunity for one male to monopolize access to all those females. So that's a pretty lucky male. It means that he can potentially exclude others from mating with them and guard them all successfully. Alternatively, if females are really spread out, it's really hard to guard them and to monopolize them. So you don't see one male typically having lots of females around him. And so the males all really want to be this big alpha male, right? The one who gets to breed potentially with up to 100, 150 females. That sounds like a good gig. So the males come to the breeding site and they essentially fight to establish dominance hierarchies that determine access to these groups of females. And the winners of these fights effectively get to breed with these females and pass on their genes to the next generation of pups. So it's a very desired position to have on the colony. However, the catch is that elephant seals aren't feeding or drinking water during this time. So they are on land breeding for a period of up to 100 days without access to food or water. And so if you're fighting all the time, if you're just a big male and you're running around like a lunatic trying to beat up everybody, over the course of the entire season, you're going to burn out really soon. You're going to burn through all of your calories and you're going to end up just falling asleep in the bushes for the rest of the breeding season, which we do see. So an advantage or I guess a strategy to avoiding that is to convey information through vocalizations, right? So there's something encoded in these calls that allow males to assess one another so that they don't have to actually fight, but that they can effectively vocalize and gain information about the other individual's fighting ability. And then that cuts down on the energy that it takes in order to, from fighting. So we have, over the course of the past 10 years, discovered that the calls produced by males are actually very similar to their names. And so each male possesses his own unique, what we call a signature call, right? So my signature call would be Carolyn, right? And yours would be Jen. And when we encounter one another, if we have fought previously, I'll just yell my name over and over again, which is essentially what they're doing. Carolyn, Carolyn, Carolyn. And you recognize it and you say, I've messed with Carolyn before and I beat her last time. So I have a pretty good likelihood of winning this contest. And so I'm going to go for it. Or alternatively, you say Jen and I say, I don't know. I remember Jen, I remember that call, and last time I got my butt kicked. I don't know if I want to do that again. And so they're constantly doing this, exchanging vocalizations over these females, and it helps them to decide whether or not they want to attack or retreat without actually having to engage in these fights, which elephant seals are, known for, but it doesn't actually happen that frequently because these calls are so effective at conveying information to one another. So yeah, that's effectively what they're saying to each other.
Wow, that is incredible. And so how are you able to go out into the field and take recordings of this sound and analyze it back in the lab, right? So I can't even imagine you taking a recording of this. Are you like holding a microphone up to these animals, or how are you recording or collecting all of this data?
Yeah, exactly. We have microphones that we use and that are good at recording elephant seals from different distances. So if we want to know how loud an elephant seal is in terms of its amplitude, we have a microphone that we hold fairly close to the animal. If we want to record them from a greater distance, we use what's called a directional microphone. It's similar to like a boom microphone that you've seen for filming, movies and stuff like that. So when these guys are exhibiting their natural calling behavior in the field, when one male is vocalizing at another, you can kind of sneak in and get a recording of that individual, and then take notes about who they are, what the context of that vocalization was, what your distance to the animal was, and then you record multiple animals within one day. Then you take that data back and then you look at it in a sound analysis program, and you can start to pick up patterns and analyze specific components of the call, like the pitch or temporal features like the tempo or how long it is. So it depends kind of on what you're interested in, but you can analyze anything you want from these calls.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you are a very brave individual going into this sea of elephant seals and recording their sound. And I do want to say, please don't do this if you are not a researcher. That's incredibly, that's mind-blowing to me, just to collect all of this data and then go back to analyze it, and then being able to find out that what they're saying is almost like their name. That is so cool that you were able to learn that. So we got a question: if elephant seals sound the same from when they are a pup or when they're really, really young, maybe a juvenile, all the way to adulthood. So do they always have the same sound from when they're really young to when they get old, or does it change along the way? Have you been able to look at that at all?
Yeah. We just completed a study that was published this year on that very question. We know that among males, the calls are very fixed. So my name is, if I'm an adult male, let's say between 8 and 14 years old, and these guys are only living 14, maybe 15 years of age, so not super long. But if you're an adult, your call is going to be exactly the same across the season, no matter if you're talking to Joe or Sam, and between years. So it's incredibly fixed and stable, to the point where we could hear a male coming from the water for the first time in the season. He vocalizes and we go, oh, that's our favorite male, so-and-so, just by the way that he sounds. But we had no idea what they sounded like when they were younger and whether or not they change over the course of development. So young individuals do not have signatures, as it turns out. Their calls they're all over the place, right? They're practicing a lot. They have components of the adult vocalization, but they're mixing it up. And it's kind of like a boy going through puberty. It's not really set. And so we looked at exactly when during reproductive development their calls crystallize, and it happens right at about the time that they actually can become reproductively competitive within the larger hierarchy. So before they're big and bad enough to compete really for access to females, they're pretty acoustically inconspicuous. Like you can't really tell the difference between individual males. They all sort of sound similar to one another. They're not consistent from one day to the next. And then they reach this period where they're actually, potential players in this very competitive system. And then those calls kind of begin to stabilize and differentiate from one another. So I should mention and reiterate that the calls of individual males are very different once they become adults, right? So one male might have a really fast call like pop, 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 pop. And another male might have a doublet call like pop, 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 pop. And so you can really tell the difference between individuals acoustically. And when males are younger, it's just not that possible. And that's interesting for a number of reasons. Humans have to develop their speech over time, and so do songbirds. And so songbirds aren't born with their songs, right? They have to interact with other individuals potentially and learn from social tutors before they develop their adult songs. And so it does indicate potentially that male elephant seals are maybe learning the sounds that they make over time, which is a very rare quality in the animal kingdom. Very few animals kind of learn the sounds that they make, rather than the sounds kind of being innate. Like a dog barks and it's going to sound, relatively similar across its whole life, versus humans and some other species that have to learn how to sound like a human.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. So I got another question here that asks a little bit more about your background and what is, what was the reason that you decided to dedicate your life to this type of science? Like, did you have a spark in your career that was like, this is what I want to do? Or were you always the kid that was like out in nature and playing in the trees, or, swimming in the ocean? What made you really want to do science?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I always had an affinity for animals. I thought I wanted to be a vet when I was younger. And then I actually did my undergrad at UC Santa Cruz. I did my master's at UC Santa Cruz, and I did my Ph.D. at UC Santa Cruz. So go Slugs. But during my time as an undergrad, it wasn't until I got involved in a researcher named Colleen Reichmuth's lab. And she studies seals and sea lions, and all the research that I'm talking about today has been in collaboration with her. I started volunteering there when I was a junior in college, and I just fell in love with this idea that in her lab, we were working with captive animals. And so you could work cooperatively with animals to answer research questions that were going to help the species as a whole, at a larger scale. And then she and Ron Schusterman, who is one of the founding members of the Marine Mammal Society, he was a bigwig in the animal cognition field and vocal communication field. They actually took me to Año Nuevo for the first time. And we just sat up on a dune looking at all these animals interacting. And I remember him saying, like, okay, like watch carefully, Carolyn, this male is going to do this, and that's going to set off this cascade effect that's then going to create, this drama over here. And him and Colleen were predicting what was going to happen before it happened, and then it would happen. And I was like, how do you do that? And they just knew the animals so well that they were able to read their behavior as it was happening in real time. And then I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to know like a species so well that I could look outside and say, okay, these are the conditions that are happening right now. This is what's probably going to happen, and begin to make predictions about that. And so, yeah, it was kind of really just my experience as an undergrad in that research lab. And I still work with her. This program is a part of her program. And I'm very fortunate to have really good mentors in that way.
That is so incredible. I could only imagine the first time going out to Año Nuevo and looking at all of these animals. That's incredible. So can you tell us about how far away Año Nuevo is from UC Santa Cruz? Is it far? Is it close? I know we talk about Año Nuevo a lot, but I know some folks tuning in have no idea what it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. So elephant seals breed along the entire coast of Baja, Mexico, all the way up now to some places in Oregon and even potentially Canada. So there's a lot of breeding colonies kind of sprinkled throughout the Pacific, Northwest primarily, and here in Central California. And so Año Nuevo is right in the middle of their breeding range. And so it is 35 miles north of Santa Cruz. So it's a pretty easy drive up to the breeding colony. It's relatively small in comparison to some other breeding colonies, or I guess maybe medium size. The largest ones are down in the Channel Islands, which are off the coast of Santa Barbara and Los Angeles. They have upwards of 30,000 elephant seals breeding at those sites. At Año Nuevo, it's somewhere between maybe 4,000 and 5,000, and so it's on the smaller side. But it was recolonized in 1961. So relatively recently, these animals kind of began breeding at the Año Nuevo site and some other sites along California.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Carolyn, I only have a few more questions left for you, and they're really fun ones. And so do you have any advice or tips or recommendations for any aspiring scientists out there that want to either start studying animal behavior or, oceanography or geology? Just any advice that you have for those aspiring young scientists out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I would first, figure out kind of generally what you're excited about and learn as much as you can about it. Obviously, I kind of, became fascinated by animal behavior and zoned in on acoustics. I didn't always know that I wanted to do that. So I did a lot of reading, which helps. And then honestly, I think the most influential thing for most of my colleagues and I is finding a mentor that's willing to help you along the way, whether it be at a university, a professor that you had, or if you see someone doing research that you think is really cool, you read a paper, or you see a news article. Reach out to that person and see if they have any opportunities. I think being paired like that is really helpful and will open you up to a whole new network of people rather than going at it blind. So I would say, can become like this with somebody who you really respect and admire, which is what I did. And I was able to really pursue what I enjoyed.
Oh, that's so great to hear. And one of the final questions that I have for you is, what is the best part about your job? Like, what makes you, love being a scientist, and what motivates you to do this every single day? And it could be something, as simple as, I just love looking at elephant seals, or it could be something as complex as, learning all of these detailed intricacies of this acoustic behavior. Anything.
I think it's the wow factor. The reason people fall in love with animals is because there are these factoids, that you discover about them that make you just be like, what, they do that? I'm thinking, for example, the fact that elephants live in matriarchal societies and have these long-term bonds, and potentially mourn the loss of relatives. That is something that someone only found out by careful observation and study. And then it inspires other people around them to have empathy towards those animals and to want to conserve them. So, the facts that make your jaw drop and just say, like, that is so cool. That's the best part of my job, and I think the fact that elephant seals communicate sort of in this advanced way is super, super cool. And it gets other people really excited about it. And if I can get other people excited about elephant seals, which might not be the most attractive seal species, but definitely the coolest, then I've done my job. So that's my favorite part of the job, and being able to share that with others through programs like this.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Oh, Carolyn, you're so amazing, and the work you do is so inspiring. And I think I could ask you questions for the next 5 hours about elephant seals and animal behavior, but sadly, we are running out of time. So since I can't ask you questions for the next 5 hours, do you have a website or a place online where folks can go to learn more about you and your research?
Sure. Yeah, we have a great website under Colleen's lab called pinnipedlab.ucsc.edu. You can find out more about the captive program and also some of the field work that was mentioned today. And you have links to a lot of the papers and bios on that website as well.
That's so great. So I will make sure that website is linked in the video description below, so folks can access it at any point in time and learn more about Carolyn's incredible work, but also the Pinniped Lab's incredible work too. Well, Carolyn, I just can't say thank you enough for being here and answering all of our questions today. Again, I really just can't say how amazing your work is and what you do. We're really, really lucky that you are at UC Santa Cruz and learning all about these elephant seals and animal behavior, and hopefully we can apply that to conservation efforts. So thank you for what you do. It's really, really inspiring. Before we go, I also want to send a big shout out to everyone that tuned in today. I see that Evan and Patrick both tuned in. So hi, and thank you for watching today. And thank you to everyone else as well. It's really folks like you that keep these programs running, keep these programs online. And so if you are in the position today, I do ask that you please consider making a donation or becoming a member with the Seymour Center so we can keep these programs running. You can find more information on our website, seymourcenter.ucsc.edu, or go ahead and click on the links in the video description below. And while you're there on our website, go ahead and sign up for our e-newsletter as well, so you'll never miss any upcoming programs or events or distance learning activities. And with that, I have to say, mark your calendars for the next Labside Chat on November 12th. More information will be on our website very, very soon. But thank you all so much again for tuning in. It's been such a pleasure. Happy early Halloween, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.